This week's edition of NJBIA's Minding Your Business is brought to you in part by AT&T, helping family, friends, and neighbors connect in meaningful ways every day. From the first phone call 140 years ago to mobile video streaming today, AT&T innovates to improve lives. New Jersey's community colleges, aligning education to build an innovative workforce. Find out how your business can join and benefit at njpathways.org. And by New Jersey Business Magazine, providing the critical information needs for New Jersey's business community for more than 65 years.
Welcome to NJBIA's Minding Your Business. I'm your host, Bob Considine. Well, NextEra Energy Transmission is known as the gold standard company in North America for transmission of electric wind power. Here to discuss the big offshore wind goals the company is looking to achieve right here in New Jersey are Becky Walding, Executive Director of Development, and Matt Valle, President of NextEra Energy Transmission Mid-Atlantic. Folks, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us, Bob.
All right, so let's talk about NextEra Energy to begin with. This is historically not only for New Jersey, but nationally. You guys are just huge in terms of green energy generation.
That's correct, Bob. We're number one in wind and solar and battery storage development in the country. We've been in the renewable business for over 20 years. Wow. We've got projects in almost 40 states around the country, and on an annual basis, put about $15 million of projects in the ground around the country.
Wow.
So this is what we do day in and day out. Obviously, transmission lines are a key piece of interconnecting all of that renewable projects to the grid. Mm-hmm. For some, we're the largest renewable company that you've never heard of. We certainly have been in New Jersey for a number of years too. Mm-hmm. But traditionally, NextEra sells projects to other utilities and not necessarily direct to, obviously, residential customers. But as this country is starting to head towards a decarbonization across the entire economy, which is really, as we're pivoting, what we want our role to be, we want to lead that transition, and not just in a few states, but across the entire country. We are out there looking at larger projects to advance some of these renewable energy goals. And New Jersey's got one of the largest goals in the country. Yeah. So we're very excited to be here. Very excited to be participating in this process, mm-hmm. and bringing some of the expertise we have as a company to New Jersey.
Right. All right. So now we know more about NextEra Energy, but NextEra Energy Transmission, what they're currently looking to do in New Jersey, you currently have a proposal with the state BPU to facilitate New Jersey's offshore wind projects through what are essentially connection lines. So I was hoping that you could tell the folks at home how this works. How do you get offshore wind power to the homes and businesses of New Jersey?
Sure. So what New Jersey is looking at doing, which is really an innovative approach to bringing the energy from out in the ocean onto shore, mm-hmm. is what they have learned in Europe over time, which is network of transmission that is laid in the ocean, connected by platforms, is the most efficient and reliable way to bring that energy in. Okay. So the way that the state of New Jersey is approaching this is really two different solicitations. One is for the wind energy developers, right? The developers who are going to be putting the wind turbines Sure. into the ocean, mm-hmm. and then transmission companies like ourselves who are going to meet those developers out in the ocean, connected up to those platforms, right. Almost a baton handoff, if you will, and then bring that energy on shore. Mm-hmm. That's where our expertise lies, is bringing that on shore, figuring out how to interconnect that to the existing grid, and whatever other necessary upgrades are required to get that energy to flow around the state. Okay. So that's the process that the state of New Jersey is going through, and I think it's going to yield the best result, the overall most cost-effective result, and most reliable result for mm-hmm. the state.
What do you think, Becky? What else can you add to this?
I would add that our projects also deliver a tremendous amount of megawatts, almost 12,000 megawatts.
12,000 megawatts, wow.
Yeah, and so the way we've done it too is we've really tried to lower the impact to communities and to the environment by using a common route that we're going through for a lot of our projects. Okay. So you're kind of in a one and done. Right. You install an interstate instead of a highway, instead of a county road, really. You know? And so what you don't have is you don't have each wind generator itself trying to come and and
Gotcha.
bury its own line onshore.
Mhm.
You do it one time and you take multiple wind generators through that one corridor.
Oh, that's well said. Okay.
Mhm.
And the offshore wind power in New Jersey, what is the state hoping to deliver? You mentioned this could do 12,000. What is the state actually looking to deliver?
Well, the state is initially looking at 7,500 megawatts. And just to
Okay.
put that in perspective, that is roughly, if those megawatts were, if the wind was blowing in the ocean and all
Mhm.
that was coming ashore,
Right.
that's roughly half the state of New Jersey's energy coming
Wow.
onshore from wind at one time. That just gives you a sense of the scale
Mhm.
that we're talking about. Obviously, the wind is not blowing
Right.
all the time at full strength, so other resources in the existing grid will have to support it.
Right.
But that is a major step forward,
Yeah.
right? And that is why I think New Jersey is one of the leading states in the country with the ambitions of, what the governor wants to do with even the first 7,500 megawatts of wind. As
Yeah.
Becky said, our proposal can accommodate up to 12,000 megawatts. So we know that over time that the state is likely going to look at bringing more offshore wind on. And to Becky's point, you want to do it one time. You don't want to go back in the ocean and do this again.
Exactly.
Build for the future, build
Right.
with expandability in mind.
Right. So I think you've answered my next question, which is, would new transmission line at least be needed for the future? It sounds like right now it wouldn't, beyond if this project was accepted, 12,000 megawatts for 7,500 megawatts needed now.
So you could actually do the 12,000 and you could use it now. What it's going to do is displace, it's going to displace fossil generation
Right.
potentially.
Absolutely.
And so it's only better for the environment that you go ahead and you even target higher amounts
Mhm.
because it's clean, renewable energy. It lowers the risk to the state of having potential strong storms in the future, such as Storm Sandy.
Yeah.
And so it just makes it a better economy. Not only that, we expect the state to also start moving towards electrification, which means that there's going to be more cars plugged into the grid and there's going to be more demand of
Mhm.
electricity going forward.
Yeah.
I just want to emphasize one point that Becky made because it is very topical right now. But this idea of energy independence, and I'm sure everybody, it's not lost on how much it
Right.
costs to fill up at the pump.
I've
right?
noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed last night when I filled up. I'm buying an electric vehicle. I will let you know.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, back to the amount of energy, this is New Jersey's own generation off New Jersey's shore that is coming to New Jersey customers. That is not dependent on foreign or even other states, right? That is effectively, once the capital is installed, it is not going to be volatile energy, right? The wind is going to blow, the energy will be generated.
Right.
It is truly resiliency and energy independence for the state. And it's green at the same time.
Yeah.
And we think we can do it cost effectively, right? And I think that's why New Jersey is looking at this very hard. There's other states in the Northeast. California is now looking at this. This makes a ton of sense. It's got to be blended in with other sources, right? Because the wind doesn't always blow.
Yeah.
But New Jersey has got a terrific
Absolutely.
opportunity with the resource that's just off the shore
Yeah.
to really become energy independent.
Yeah, it's amazing. What experience does NextEra Energy have in terms of other large-scale offshore wind projects?
Well, we've got, in terms of transmission, we own at NextEra Energy Transmission 3 of the 4 major, we have an ownership stake in 3 of the 4 major offshore transmission networks in the country.
Okay.
One of them goes into Long Island.
Okay.
One of them goes into San Francisco and powers 40% of the city
Right.
on any given day.
Mm-hmm.
These are not your typical overhead transmission lines. These
Right.
are cables. These are buried under the ocean.
Right.
They're direct current versus alternating current, and that effectively needs to be converted at big power stations on either side that look like substations kind of enclosed.
Right.
It's a specialty, and there's a number of them in Europe and other places in the world. There's not many of them in the United States yet.
Okay.
And so we have a lot of expertise not only operating those, but thinking about doing the maintenance and then the installation of these. This is not the type of stuff for just any developer out there. This is a specialized skill set, and these are big, complex projects that take many years to permit and get installed. And so we think it's really, only a few developers can get this type of stuff done.
Okay. When we talk about offshore wind, sometimes the topic of reliability does come up. I mean, what would you say to someone who might question the reliability of offshore wind and how, your part of this transmission can help that?
Well, I think, you have to look at where this has been done and what are the results. And Europe has been doing this for 10 or 15 years kind of at scale in a lot of different places with very good results. That's not to say, like any technology, there aren't occasional issues that
Sure.
you've got to problem solve and think through.
Right.
But, by and large, you have wind turbines in the North Sea where you've got, big waves and storms that move through.
Yeah.
So the anchoring systems, how to place that is it's been tested out. The transmission, as Becky and I were talking about over the last 10 or 15 years in this country, we've been a part of a number of those cable projects. So burying that cable in the ocean, the converting technology, that is tried and true. So I think the fundamental building blocks are well known. I think when you look at a project like this, the complexity comes from all of these things have to go right together.
Right.
And you've got multiple entities. You have the owner of the grid on shore.
Yep.
You have the transmission company to build out to the platforms.
Mm-hmm.
You have different vendors that are providing the technology. And then you have the wind developer out
Right.
there. You need to find somebody. We look at ourselves as we're kind of in between all these, right? And so we are looking to make sure we collaborate well from the wind developers, the grid, and then there's a lot of federal and state permitting issues to work through too.
Yeah.
That is really the challenge, back to this type of project.
Right.
I think we can all think of examples, this state and other states, of complex projects,
Right.
and picking the right partner that can navigate those issues,
Mm-hmm.
that can get something done in the face of challenges, that can collaborate with others and persist, I think is really, really important for the state.
Okay. We got just a few minutes here left, but I did want to ask, we have large projects. They can get expensive. What do you guys learned in the past in terms of being able to control costs for something like this?
So what we've done on this project is not only do we believe we're the lowest cost provider of the information that's been released, we've also provided cost containment, which means customers don't take all the overruns of the project.
Oh, that's
and so we're
interesting.
one of the strongest
Right.
in cost containment measures, protecting every piece of the cost that goes to customers. We've provided protections on.
Mm-hmm. How's NextEra done in terms of timeliness of completion of projects?
So we've constructed across the country, I talked about that 15-16 billion a year, about 300 major projects over the last decade. And of those 300 projects, we've got a track record of 99% of them coming in on time, and under budget.
Wow.
So this is something that I think we're uniquely positioned to do. We compete for these right all over the country, and we have to deliver under a variety of different contracts. And we're bringing that expertise to this project. I mean, Becky talked about the cost containment. There's not a lot, and you think about different industries and complex projects, pick roads, bridges, other things.
That's exactly
things that would have cost containment on there where the developers are agreeing to a cap,
right,
or a schedule commitment, or the operation and maintenance that goes on afterwards. So a lot of that is built into our offer.
Okay.
Because we know that's important, right? We
Right.
know to keep these projects cost effective, we've
Right.
got to deliver within the boundaries of what we talked about in our bid.
No, it sounds great. It sounds like you've done so many big projects at NextEra Energy, and experience counts when it comes to these things. So wish you the best of luck with the bid, and thank you for what you're doing in New Jersey right now.
Well, thanks, Bob. We appreciate it.
All right. Matt, Valle, Becky, Walding, NextEra Energy Transmission. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Bob.
Great. I'll be back right after these words.
Okay, at AT&T, everyone gets our best deals on all smartphones.
Let me break it down. You got your new customers.
They get our best deals.
You got your existing customers.
They also get our best deals.
Everyone
Gets the deals.
questions.
Got it. But why did you use a permanent marker?
Because I want to make sure you remember. I'm going to get a new whiteboard.
It's not complicated. Only AT&T gives everyone our best deals on every smartphone, like the Samsung Galaxy S21 5G for free.
Welcome back to NJBI is Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. Well, there's some real positive movement on bills looking to bolster New Jersey's beleaguered childcare industry. Here to talk about that, as well as some concerning labor bills, is NJBI Director of Government Affairs, Alexis Bailey. Alexis, thank you for being back on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so when we talk about childcare industry, before we get into these individual bills, I did want to talk about how COVID kind of really laid bare some of the problems in the childcare industry in New Jersey. How so?
Absolutely. So the childcare industry was acutely impacted by the pandemic. As you can imagine, they faced a lot of classroom closures with different exposures to COVID-19 throughout the pandemic. This is an industry that was really struggling prior to COVID-19, and all those things are really just exacerbated over the past 2 years.
And it's come in the form of less people coming back to work, correct?
Absolutely. So what we're seeing right now is that, especially for women in the workforce, they've been impacted by the lack of childcare access in the state. New Jersey has childcare deserts up and down the state in urban and rural areas, and it's just really impacted working mothers.
All right. So let's go back to April. Senate Majority Leader Teresa Ruiz, she unveiled a comprehensive childcare bill package, which was basically going to help childcare providers, employees, and parents. Alexis, I know you were there stakeholdering these bills, and you were there on the announcement. Can you explain to our audience out there how having an improved childcare system for New Jersey actually helps like almost all New Jersey employers?
Yeah, so having a thriving childcare system in the state really impacts everyone and helps all employers because it allows their employees to have a safe place to put their kids during the day, which we know is critically important as a lot of parents in the state probably dealt with being teachers at home throughout the pandemic and dealing with being a daycare provider as well while they're trying to work. So we all know how important it is to have a safe and secure place for our kids to go during the day so we can get to work.
I feel like I got my master's in teaching during COVID for my little guy. All right, so let's take a brief look at these bills individually that are going through various committees right now in Trenton, and we'll take them in numerical order, and of course, hold your applause at home until all the bills have been read. Alexis, S1099 allows a gross income tax credit for childcare staff members who have been employed by a childcare provider or worked as a registered family daycare provider for a minimum of 1,260 hours for a 6-month period during the taxable year. I know you just came back from the State House, and I think you testified on this bill today, correct?
Yes, I testified on a number of the bills in this package. This piece of legislation is sponsored by Majority Leader Ruiz and Assemblywoman Lopez, and their goal with this is really to bolster the wages of these workers. As we know, childcare workers are not the highest paid workers in our economy, and this gives them just a little bit of boost through a tax credit, which we're in full support of.
Right, enhances the wages, right? S2475 establishes the Department of Early Childhood to provide focused and integrated development of 0 to 5 care and education. Why is NJBIA supporting this one?
This bill is really important because childcare providers are currently regulated with a number of different departments in state government, whether that's the Department of Environmental Protection, Education, Health, you name it, they're probably regulated by that department. And this Department of Early Childhood would really streamline those processes for providers and give them one central location in state government to deal with licensing and regulatory issues.
All right, very good. Let's go to S2476, which provides funding for the expansion of infant and toddler seats by 1,000, reimbursed at $22,000 per seat. I got to ask the basic question, what is a seat? And then what is the bill?
So when they're talking about increasing 1,000 child care seats for infants and toddlers, that's going to be 1,000 spots for our youngest residents to be during the day. So we're really supportive of this bill because it's trying to combat some of the deserts that we're seeing across the state and expand some of those infant and toddler seats, which is the age demographic that we see the most need.
All right, so let's go to a little higher priority bill. S2477 requires new preschool programs or seat expansions to use private providers for at least 50% of their preschool slots. Why is this one a big deal?
This bill is critically important to the child care industry because it would mandate a mixed delivery system for child care across the state. And what that means is that both the private and public sector have a seat at that table on who's going to care for these children. And that's really important for private providers because if we move to just the public sector taking care of those 3 and 4-year-olds, the private sector really can't thrive without being able to take care of the 3 and 4-year-olds due to staffing ratios for infants and toddlers. As you can imagine, you need more teachers in a classroom with infants versus a 4-year-old's classroom. So they really need all age demographics to be able to be sustainable.
Very, very good. Very interesting. Another high priority one, S2478, extends the enrollment-based payment model established during the pandemic. Now, I believe you talked about this before on the show, but can you remind us? There's 2 different ways these places receive state subsidies, and they're based on enrollment or attendance.
So prior to the pandemic, subsidy payments were based on attendance. During the pandemic, we know that a lot of classrooms were closed. Children were in and out, maybe 10 or 14-day quarantine. So the state decided that enrollment-based subsidy payments would provide a more sustainable steady stream of income for these childcare providers.
Mm-hmm.
And we found that to be extremely helpful to providers, and we're hoping that can be extended and hopefully made permanent in the long term. But this bill right now would extend those payments through 2025.
2025, okay.
Yes.
And currently, this situation is allowed through August?
Yes, through statute, it was going to be allowed through June 30th, but the Department of Human Services has extended enrollment-based payments through August of this year.
And that previous extension to June originally was from Governor Murphy, correct?
Yes, so there was legislation last session that would have made enrollment-based subsidy payments permanent.
Right.
The governor conditionally vetoed that legislation and wanted to go through June 30th this year.
And if it does become permanent, or even for an extended period of time, this enrollment-based pay system, aren't there certain reports that are going to have to be filed as part of this legislation?
Yes, part of the legislation requires a study to be done on the impacts of enrollment-based payments and how they've influenced the businesses in this space. So that report will be coming out to say, if they were beneficial, we think from what we've been hearing from providers, we know that it has been beneficial for them.
And who would be responsible for that report?
The Department of Human Services.
Got it. Okay. Next one, S2479. This is a big one for business. Provides tax incentives to employers who provide childcare in their facilities, reimburse parents for their childcare expenses, or contract with private providers so their employees can enroll their children in those childcare programs. Why is this one important?
This one is critically important for us, and we were proud to be working with Majority Leader Ruiz on this bill, and in particular, because we want businesses to be able to help their employees and get some incentive for doing so. We think if business has a seat at that table and is looking at their benefits packages differently in different ways that they can support their employees, childcare is a key component of that, and this bill wants to incentivize that and help businesses do just that.
And has it been posted to a committee yet, that one?
This one has not been heard in committee yet. We hope that it will be soon, if not this month, hopefully in the fall.
Got it. Okay. And the last one I'll just bring to attention, S2480 extends the child care subsidies to families earning up to 300% of the federal poverty line. And I guess current families are earning up to $250 of the federal poverty line. Just overall, when we talk about this big bill package for child care, and there's been several committees, there's been votes on many of these bills. What's the general sense of enthusiasm that you're getting from the legislature?
I think there's a lot of enthusiasm in the legislature for these bills. The pandemic really showed us that childcare is a key component of our economy. And I think on a bipartisan basis, we've seen in both committees, Republicans as well, voting for these bills. The speaker has been talking about childcare, the majority leader, and everyone really is recognizing that now is the time for us to do something and really chart the path forward for this industry and give them some stabilization to support our economy.
Yeah, very good. And I know you've been right at the forefront of promoting this, Alexis. Well done.
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to go from light to dark.
Yes.
Labor bills. I understand that there's been some labor policy issues that NJBIA is actually, bills that you're actually not supporting. So I'll bring them up to your attention here. S2389 requires employers to retain various services for 90 days after a change of ownership. What's that law about?
So this bill kind of goes with the trend that we've been seeing in the legislature of requiring businesses to retain their employees during any change of ownership. We've seen it in the hotel industry. Now we're seeing in the healthcare space. This bill is the most far-reaching one yet because it impacts service employees in a number of industries and business types. So service employees, as defined in this bill, is anyone that's involved in the care or maintenance of a property. So
like
that
a landscaper?
Your landscapers, front desk workers, janitorial staff, any of those types of workers. And like I said, it impacts an extreme number of businesses. When I talk to some of our members, I say everyone's probably included in this bill, and I encourage them to go take a look. It's office complexes that are more than 100,000 square feet, pharma labs, warehouse and distribution centers, healthcare facilities. Like I said, you name it, you're probably included in the bill. And it's really just striking at will employment in the state.
Yeah, I was almost thinking it's almost like supporters of those bills are almost trying to entrench how private business retains employees and ensures profitability. I mean, they should have that right, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And in these cases where you're changing ownership of your service contract, there's a reason why you might be going with a new janitorial contract or what have you. And now they're really taking away businesses' ability to negotiate those contracts in the best way for their business and ensure profitability.
All right, next one, Alexis. A3715 limits the provisions and enforceability of restrictive covenants. What are restrictive covenants? It sounds horrible. And what does the bill do?
So restrictive covenants are your non-compete agreements, non-solicitation, non-disclosure, those types of agreements that an employer may want to work with their employee to put one of those in place. Okay. So this bill has various different restrictions on when you can use these restrictive covenants. In particular, if there's a certain number of different types of employees that you can't have any sort of restrictive covenant with. And this bill would include non-exempt employees. So if you're considered non-exempt under the Fair Labor Standards Act, you can't have any sort of restrictive covenant on them. Additionally, if you're an independent contractor, a business would not be able to have any restrictive covenant with them. And in those cases, independent contractors are your own business that you're working with. So it gets a little dicey on why you would want them excluded from restrictive covenants, as well as employees that have worked for you for less than 1 year. You could work for 9 months and still have access to a ton of proprietary information that a restrictive covenant may be necessary. And this bill is really far-reaching in the number of employees that it impacts.
And you hit on proprietary information and how sometimes New Jersey wants to be the innovation state. And this bill can really impact New Jersey's innovation from that standpoint, could it not?
Absolutely. If we want to continue to become the innovation state, like you mentioned, and attract new startups, especially in tech spaces, different industries that are highly competitive, we want to make sure that employers are able to protect themselves in their proprietary interest, trade secrets, and those types of things.
Got it. All right, just a couple more, Alexis. Thank you so much for all this time and information. She knows everything. A1474 mandates that temporary laborers receive the same wages and benefits as their equivalent employee counterparts. This bill also holds temporary help service and third-party companies using their services jointly liable for any violation of the bill, including reporting requirements related to temporary labor. So I guess the intent of this bill is that to ensure all workers employed by temporary help service firms are treated fairly. But what are some other concerns about it?
Yeah, so like you said, the intent of this bill is to make sure that any temporary laborers that are working with temp agencies are treated fairly, they're safe in the workplace, which there are many mechanisms in place in current law that ensure those sorts of things in any workplace. But this bill, one thing you mentioned is the joint liability between the third-party company that may be using these temporary laborers and the temporary help service firm. So the bill requires a level of reporting that the temporary help service firm would have to, for example, tell the laborers where they're going to be working, that sort of information. If they don't provide that information, now you as a third-party company who may have no control over what they're doing in that circumstance, you could be held jointly liable, which we just think isn't fair, doesn't make the most sense. Additionally, you mentioned the requirement that these temporary laborers would have to receive the same wages and benefits as their equivalent employee counterparts. That doesn't make much sense from our perspective as well, because if you think about it, if you have a temporary laborer that's working in your facility for, say, a month, they're not technically your employee. They work for the temporary help service firm, and now you need to give them the same benefits. Are you going to enroll them in your 401k system when they're not your employee? They're only there for a month. Doesn't make much sense. So those are some of our concerns with this bill.
All right, Alexis, last one. A822 would add regulatory burdens for employers of domestic workers, which include home health care workers, nannies, and cleaning staff, among others that work in private homes. What's this one about?
So this bill is trying to create another layer of regulation. The intent is to try to make sure that domestic workers are safe in the workplace, but there's a lot of far-reaching things that go way beyond that. In particular, an example I like to use is for home health aides. They're already regulated through the Department of Health, Department of Labor, and the Division of Consumer Affairs. And now we're going to add even more burden on these workers that are already highly regulated. It's just not necessary.
And we need those workers, by the way.
Yes, absolutely. And I would like to mention as well, this bill revises the workers' compensation law and adds in the ABC test, which is far-reaching, well beyond domestic workers. And this would impact all independent contractors in the state.
Well, Alexis Bailey's well said and well done. You're covering a lot of ground here. Good stuff on childcare.
Thank you.
Bad stuff on labor, but I know you're fighting it. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And thank you all for joining us on NJBI is Minding Your Business. I'll see you next time.